Akhenaten became Pharaoh of Egypt around the year 1360 BC, he kindled a religious revolution. He wanted to restrict worship to the sun god Atun. Egypt had been a polytheistic realm for more than 2,000 years. It was an immense risk here, of all places, to attempt to found a religion with a single god. The king ordered the construction of a new sanctuary, honoring the hitherto insignificant god Atun. It was the largest place of worship ever planned in Egypt. Sacrifices to the new god were to be made on more than 400 altars. The old temple, until then the most splendid building in Egypt, seemed modest in comparison. It was a scandal that the king had even considered this plan. Even though the priests were in theory only charged with maintaining order in the temple, they also had worldly power. They called themselves servants of God, but primarily they served themselves. Sacrifices of incense, food and drink were offered to the gods daily in order to buy their goodwill. Whole armies of priests and officials performed their duties at the temple in a strict hierarchy. In addition to the services, the buildings were in constant need of repair and beautification. However, to Akhenaten, the inner sanctum of the temple seemed like a dungeon. Here, true faith could not blossom. His decision was irrevocable. Amun's time was over. Long live Atun, god of the sun. The White Chapel in Karnak dates from the time when Amun became the main god of Egypt. It was Pharaoh Sesostris I who had it built. Its images and hieroglyphs contain an allegedly everlasting truth. Over and over again, they show the king communing with the god. The inscriptions conjure up their magic unity. Amun and the family of the gods recognized the pharaoh when he sacrificed to them. It was a mutual agreement that appears to have been vindicated time and time again. No pharaoh could avoid the traditional rites, until the arrival of Akhenaten. The rules of the realm of the pharaohs said, the king should rule in the palace, the priest should rule at the temple. However, the more the high priest's influence grew, the more and more difficult it became for him to adhere to this rule. Already his predecessors had forced their will on the pharaoh several times, and no one had until then dared to rebel against the priests of the highest god. The priests of Amun displayed their power in numerous processions, but the change in their fortunes had already been prepared by Akhenaten's father. Amenhotep III had himself depicted next to other gods more and more frequently, an insult to the divine overlord Amun. Like Amun, Amenhotep had himself carried to the new temple at Luxor in a ceremonial sedan chair, a humiliation for the servants of the god. All the same, Amenhotep did not want to abandon traditional ideas of faith entirely. First, he turned himself into a god by building the Temple of Luxor. His brilliant master builder, Amenhotep, designed a grandiose sanctuary in which the gods and the king were worshipped alike. It was a stroke of genius that gave the architect fame and honor beyond his death, and the pharaoh was held in awe by his subjects. When Amenhotep died, the priests who had once been all-powerful had already been stripped of a large portion of their rule. With his son's ascension to the throne, a new chapter in Egyptian history began. Still, he was named, like his father, Amenhotep, one beloved of Amun. But Amun was not going to enjoy the reign of this young king.
Is
Akhenaten the forefather of all the great monotheistic world religions? In any case, he stands at the beginning. He stands at the beginning of a line that is then continued in the persons of Moses, Zarathustra, Jesus, and Mohammed.
Akhenaten.
The pharaoh was as if obsessed by a religious fervor. Any means seemed justified to him to enforce worship of his single god. For this, he even changed his name. Amenhotep IV became Akhenaten, the Exalted of Atum. This was the name under which he wanted the world to worship him from then on. Even the novel bas-reliefs on the walls of temples and tombs were a provocation for conservative priests. Akhenaten's shocking watchword was truth. In a realm where beauty and balance were valued above everything else, the ruling couple were suddenly depicted as misshaped, fat and ugly, with paunches and wide hips. And above it all, there was an incomprehensible god.
Das ist die traditionelle Darstellung des Ägyptischen.
This is the traditional way of showing the Egyptian sun god, always with a human body, a falcon's head, and the sun disk, and always seen from the side. The problem resulting from this is that only one person can face the god at any given time. Traditionally, it was the Egyptian pharaoh. During the Amarna period, the situation was special, in that the king and queen were supposed to benefit equally from the presence of the sun god. Akhenaten's revolutionary contribution now is to dispense with the body of the sun god completely, and to turn the sun disk around to the front, so that king and queen can benefit equally from the sun god's signs of life.
Until then, only the pharaoh and the priests had been permitted to celebrate the service to the gods. However, by order of Akhenaten, a woman was now allowed to do so too, Nefertiti, an unforgivable violation of a taboo. As far as the priest was concerned, the pharaoh had declared war on the gods, thereby severely endangering the continued existence of Egypt. The high priest had to refuse to obey. However, Akhenaten preempted him. He had the temple stormed and the sanctuaries defiled. He prohibited a tradition several thousand years old and persecuted its adherents mercilessly. His henchmen had only one aim: the annihilation of all vestiges of the old religion. They destroyed its inscriptions even in the least accessible places. No one dared stop these royally supported iconoclasts until all the temples of Amun were reduced to rubble. The stable world order was in upheaval. A revolution was shaking the Pharaonic Empire. Traditional law and order were being stripped of their power. The priests of Amun strove desperately to save at least a few idols of their god. Overnight, Amun had become the archenemy. Hard times were dawning for the realm on the Nile.